It's a pleasure to be here. I had the opportunity to come in Philip DePoy's theater class a couple of years ago, and that was a lot of fun. So it's good to be back here at Clayton State. I'm not going to use the guitar on everything, but I thought I would mix it up a little bit. I'm going to do some segments, and each segment will contain 2 or 3 spoken word pieces, songs, or whatever, and I'll do them right straight through. I'll introduce each segment and then do the little segments, and then introduce the next segment grouping and do that. Starting with the first one, which is kind of take you on a little kind of a mini tour of Europe. She said that I had made 7 tours of Europe, which is true. The first time I played my guitar in Europe was in Paris on the left bank. It wasn't a very successful situation, but I can say that I like to say that because when I went to Europe, my goal was to go to Paris. I've always, dreamed of Paris. But I have to say that most of my success has been in Germany. So I speak better German than I do French. As a result, I can say Je m'appelle Kodac, which means my name is Kodak, But I'm going to start out in Amsterdam, and then we'll move into France, and then end up in Germany. The aroma of Amsterdam fills the air. Checked in, we step out to seize the day. The fragrance of hash floods the hotel halls. The food of the market fires my imagination and saturates my sense of smell, all as the aroma of art. We head for the Rijks. In the museum there is a visual feast. You can smell the Rembrandts, taste the Van Goghs. Genius is served. Filet of sole. We stop at a coffee house. The menu goes up in smoke. We stumble to a cafe for coffee and chocolates. We cruise down a canal. We stroll down a street. The red light's in my head and moves down from there. The tulips aren't blooming yet. The aroma of Amsterdam fills the air. In Amsterdam, women are working in windows and men are window shopping for legal fantasy. The risk is reduced. You walk away with more than a memory. You bargain for sex with a stranger. Now, what could be stranger than love behind those doors? Not really love. Everybody knows that song. Can't buy me love. No, 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 no. Still men try. And women act like they enjoy working in windows. Some do. I'm sure it's just an illusion, a costly conclusion to the night. Now, our room has quite a view of a canal below and a street running along a long row of buildings. The moon is up, the sun is too, shining in the window you're sitting in, smiling at me. Now, I couldn't be higher if I had all the dope in Amsterdam. Still somewhere the hash is burning and the Heineken is quenching her thirst for the night is coming on. A flame flickers through a green bottle. Green light means go, red light means shop. But I've already got all I need with you, wearing sunglasses after dark and photos and bars next to exotic cars. You can't take it with you. It's just a dream, something you feel when you're stoned on Amsterdam. It's a dream that's real. And I'm stoned on Amsterdam, never felt so free. Stoned on Amsterdam, just you and me in Amsterdam, just you and me in Amsterdam. On our honeymoon. Now that's dope. On a rainy day in Strasbourg, the bells of the cathedral ring. Sends a chill down my spine. I step out of the rain for a double espresso to warm my weariness. I'm greeted by a newly made French friend who brings me chocolates and greets me with a French kiss, one on either cheek. Not the twisted tongue American version, but the friendly French one. It's a warm-hearted embrace for this cold-hearted American who'd been soaked through and through by the Strasbourg rain. Sitting at the table in Edith's kitchen, sun pours in the window through the aloe vera plant, splashing across the table, setting fire to Edith's long, dark, brown hair. And I'm enjoying what I call a Bavarian croissant, because I can't pronounce the German name. All the while I'm marveling at the softness in her sweet, sensual smile. The fresh coffee warms my throat, while Edith warms my heart. In Edith's kitchen, I'm off to a good start. That lunch is simmering on the stove, where Nora Jones sings on Deutschland radio. And I'm dancing around the room following a vision of Edith's smile. That makes me smile, sure makes me smile. Now my feet are off the ground, I'm flying, and I've never been so happy as I am right now. In Edith's kitchen, I finally found love. Kitchen, so warm and so bright in the morning, turning darkness to light. Edith's kitchen, so warm and so bright in the morning, turning darkness to light. It's just a state of mind. Edith's kitchen. It's everywhere, but it's hard to find. Edith's kitchen. But it'll sure bring you peace of mind. In Edith's kitchen, time stands still. Time stands still. Time stands still. Hey! Having lunch in Edith's kitchen. The pasta nourishes me, gives me the strength to face a new day. Another night, another night. Now Edith slides across the floor, her eyes giving me a sign. Shining like diamonds, penetrating my soul, her lips finding mine. And her kisses are sweeter than Tupelo honey, that's right, Van. Sweeter than any fruit from the vine. In Edith's kitchen, I leave the darkness behind. In Edith's kitchen, so warm and so bright in the morning, turning darkness to light. Edith's kitchen, so warm and so bright in the morning, turning darkness light, turning darkness to light, turning darkness to light. In Edith's kitchen, time stands still. In the next segment, I am going to get a little darker. I'm going to deal with a couple of pieces. The first one is a persona poem. That means I'm taking the persona of a person or a thing, in this case, a machine. I wrote this a while back, and recently I've been reminded of the piece due to the elections. And the piece is called Sleaze Machine. And, you know, elections get pretty sleazy at times, and this one did too. And then I'm going to take it into a song that reverts back to my childhood of growing up in the South in the days of the county carnivals. And, you know, it's funny, yesterday's sleaze is today's nostalgia. For instance, in the 50s, a lot of people thought Elvis was pretty sleazy. Now he's like an American icon, you know. And so I don't want to say too much about this, really. I'm just going to do it. The sleaze machine could be a metaphor for a lot of different things. Somebody asked me if I was talking about the television. Well, not necessarily. Just a lot of different things. I'll tell you a story about this later. I'm the preacher selling placebos. I'm the politician on the take. I'm the promise of pornography. I'm everything plastic and fake. I come in all sizes, shapes, and colors. I'm east, I'm west, I'm short, and I'm tall. You find my name scratched on every bathroom stall. I got naked pictures of your daughter on my wall, and that ain't all. I'm your sleaze machine. I'm the rapist lurking in the shadows of your mind. I'm the child molester watching those most precious of people. I'm the serial killer. I'm the random bomber. I'm the perverted predator. I'm the voyeur looking in your bathroom window, and you step out of the shower all dripping wet, and you look up and see me smiling at you. And you ain't had enough yet all. I'm your worst nightmare. You find me everywhere, in your newspaper, magazine, radio, and TV. Seems you can't get enough of me. Nah. I'm your sleaze machine. Now, I got lots of lawyers. Lawyers are attracted to me. And if I get low on cash, well, I'll just write a book about me. And if I get away with murder, you won't even care, because I'm the alien inside your hero, and you put me there. I'm your sleaze machine. You can't get enough of me. I'm your sleaze machine. Na 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 na. I'm your sleaze machine. Comes a time in the life of a small town boy when he experiences the county carnival, when he sees things he's never seen before, when he feels things he's never felt. It's the mystery of fantasy unfolding, a glimpse into another world. You got 2 balls in a basket, won yourself a teddy bear. Took a ride on the tilt-a-whirl, you see a lot up there. But nothing you've seen tonight is gonna begin to compare. Come on in and see the show, son. Try some cotton candy. Cotton Candy was her name. Small town boys her game. Little more than pink sugar. chiffon. She drives her boy insane. She dances in his eyes. She whispers in his ears. She says, hey boy, you want to come around back after the show? She says, hey boy, you want to be a man? You want to try some cotton candy? Taste some cotton candy. Cotton candy was her name. Small town boys her game. Little more than pink chiffon. She drives her boy insane. Cotton candy was her name. Small town boys her game. Little more than pink chiffon. She drives her boy insane. Cotton candy, cotton candy, cotton candy. Get your cotton candy. Cotton candy, cotton candy, cotton candy. Try some cotton candy. Taste some cotton candy. Come on in and see the show, son. Come on in and see the show, see the show. Don't you get caught. Don't you get caught with cotton candy. Don't you get in your hair, boy. Don't you get in your hair. Don't you get caught. Come on in and see the show. Try some cotton candy. Taste some cotton candy. Try some cotton candy. See the show. See the show. Try some cotton candy. Taste some cotton candy. See the show. See the show. See the show. But don't you get caught. Now for my last segment, I'm going to try to lighten it up a little bit, somewhere in between. I often call my music beatnik blues because people always wonder, what kind of music you play, you know? Well, it depends on the band, you know. If I'm playing by myself, it's kind of folkish. If I've got a horn section and backup singers, it can be like a 10-piece soul band, which I had once. With two guitars, bass, and drums, it's rock. You throw it a little saxophone, it gets jazzy and a little bluesy, you know. I call it beatnik blues because it's kind of based in blues. It's not blues, but it's kind of based in it, in the elements, and it's beat poet-ish. And I'm sure y'all, if you talked about poetry in this country, you talked about the beat poets from the 50s. But anyway, so I'm going to do the last segment here kind of in that vein, and close out with that. Starting with a piece about a homeless man, and then into well, I'll just do them here. Just the other day, I was sitting in the park watching an old man. He had a smokestack spewing from his lips, a hole in his hat, and nothing at his fingertips, except the city. And everybody knows that the city can be hard and cold when you ain't got nothing to bribe it with. So he's competing with the pigeons for the crumbs. But then along comes his salvation. She takes him in, puts a little soup in his bowl, a little love in his heart, because she's an angel of mercy. Now, when I got up this morning, I felt like I was in some kind of meat grinder with a bunch of horses and kangaroos and cows. Yeah, maybe a few cows. You know, this burger ain't the real thing. It ain't 100%. What's your beef, buddy? But you know, they'll chew you up and spit you out like spent bazooka bubble gum. Somebody come along, step on you. Then they grind your ass in the pavement and say, walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on down the street. But then along comes your salvation. She takes you in, scrapes you up off the street, puts you on your feet again, because she's an angel of Mercy. She's an angel. People didn't want to hear anything they hadn't heard. Too busy talking. To anybody around that pretended to listen. And it sounded like static on the radio. Static on the radio. Now I'm walking down the city street, looking for someplace to go. Someplace where I can forget this empty feeling down inside. 'Cause you know they got everything inside these city walls, except room to dream. No room to dream. But I'm trying to make a new stand, 'cause it didn't work out quite like I planned. Whoa, the stage got old and the songs got cold, but I didn't have to. Don't have to be cold. Didn't have to. Don't have to be told. Poet's words were muffled in the rain, while his footsteps echoed in the night. And in the distance, a lonesome saxophone wails, and a single tear rolls down her cheek. And me, I'm in this late night dive, trying to fill that empty spot. So sit down, we'll talk a while, talk a while, talk a while. Share the time. If there's any left over, then we'll listen to that guy up there singing the blues. Singing the blues, yeah, yeah, singing the blues. Singing the blues, yeah, yeah, singing the blues. Singing the blues, yeah, yeah, singing the blues. 'Cause they sound like static on the radio. Static on the radio. Bruce Hampton said it was okay to fail if you're reaching for the impossible. The club owner said, you're not blues, and you're not rock, and you're not jazz, and you're not hip-hop, and you're not folk, and you're not country, and you're not spoken word, you're not song, you're in between. I said, I like it that way. He said, well, then there's nothing I can do for you, because you're tied to the microphone. But I want to find my own way. I want to draw my own map. So I'm sneaking down the alleys, and I'm crawling through the cracks, and I'm running down the canyons, trying to find my own way. And I fully expect to be ambushed at any moment because I don't trust either side. And tied to the stake, I know I'm the perfect prey for any predator who comes along. Because I'm tied to the microphone. I'm tied to the microphone. And I started too late, and I'm too old, and I'm too ugly, and I'm too this, and I'm too that, and I'm too skinny, and I'm too fat, and I'm too this, and I'm too that, and I'm tied to the microphone. I'm tied to the microphone. I had no easy, recognizable early talents. I was born no prodigy. I had to dig deep down to find what I had. I had determination. I had desire. I had persistence and a little soul. You got to have a little soul. So I let it sing. I got no regrets. I let it sing. I let my heart 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 sing. I got no regrets. It's just a dream. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kodac. And so now we're going to take questions from the audience.
All right. Question.
So you said that you had your BS and then from tech and then an MBA. So what brought you into poetry?
I always loved music. I came from a small town and never thought that I could do it. You know, I thought that's something people did in New York and, you know, L.A. and London and stuff. I didn't realize, I grew up just north of Macon. I didn't realize that Macon itself had produced some of the world's, greatest musicians. Otis Redding, Little Richard, and of course later on the Allman Brothers came out of, they weren't actually from there, but and James Brown was discovered there, and that was just a town 45 miles south of me. But when I grew up, it was different than today in that there was only AM radio, and you saw a little bit on television, but it wasn't like it is today with the internet and cable and stuff everywhere. So I needed a scholarship, and I was a big Georgia Tech sports fan. And I got a scholarship to go to Georgia Tech, and I have an engineering degree in textiles. So I went to Georgia Tech, basically to study textiles. But I knew I didn't want to do that because I'd worked in the cotton mills back where I was from, and didn't want to do that. But I thought, well, that'll get me to college. I needed a scholarship. It was a really interesting period of time when I was in college. When I went, I like to give this example. When I went to school, my freshman year, you would wear coats and ties to the football game regardless of whether you had a date or not. 2 years later, everybody was wearing jeans and T-shirts. In '68, when I first went to Georgia Tech, that's when Martin Luther King was assassinated, which made a big difference in my life. It started me thinking. Up to that time, I just kind of like accepted things as they were, but that really made me think. And so there were really hardcore things going on there. Vietnam was still going on, and I had a low lottery number and was facing the draft. And when I was at Tech, there's another thing's different than it is now. Everybody had to be in ROTC. So I was in ROTC. You didn't have to go after that first couple of years. You didn't have to go to advanced ROTC. But since I got a low lottery number, I decided to go into the ROTC to give me more options. And then, a couple of wonderful things happened in that regard. My mother remarried after 10 years. My father had died when I was 9 years old, and the man she married was somewhat wealthy, and offered me a chance to go to graduate school, which is exactly what I want to do to put off going into the Army. And he didn't want me to go to Vietnam either, so he said you could go anywhere you wanted to. So I said, how about New Orleans? I love New Orleans. I love the music and the jazz, and I'd been down there for Mardi Gras and just loved the town. And so I went to Mardi Gras. I went to New Orleans to school at Tulane. And I wanted to major in something liberal by that time. I was more attracted to that. But, I had an engineering degree, and what can you do? So the most broad thing I could do was get an MBA, which I studied a lot of marketing and behavioral analysis classes and stuff like that. My emphasis was in marketing, which was good. And while I was in New Orleans is like that. I went to New Orleans trying to be what other people wanted me to be. I came out of New Orleans deciding I'd be what I wanted to be, or at least try. It was in New Orleans that I got my old Martin guitar between 2 years in graduate school. It was in New Orleans where I picked up the last nickname, and I had lots of nicknames before that, Kodak. And so Kodac was born in New Orleans, and Kodac made a commitment to be an artist, to be a musician. I still had to face 2 years of the Army, but by that time, I finally put it off long enough that we got out of Vietnam. I didn't mind serving. I didn't have any problem with that. You know, I wasn't trying to get out of anything. I just wasn't for that particular war. So I did my time in the Army, and while I was in the Army, because they were cutting back on training and stuff at that time, I had a lot of free time, and I played guitar all the time. I was in a very disciplined atmosphere, and I just started playing and reading like crazy because I felt like I'd missed out on reading and literature because I had this, engineering degree and this MBA, and I just felt, deprived. So I started reading like crazy. I found myself in Monterey, California. Later, I moved to Salinas, which is John Steinbeck country. And he is, to this day, probably my favorite author. I think I read everything that he'd ever written. And then I started trying to read the classics, the Nobel Prize winners and the Russian authors. And I was finding my own way. I was reading it because I wanted to read it. It wasn't like I was required to read it in school. But at the same time, now that I've got so involved in poetry and things like that, being chairman of Poetry Atlanta and working at Poetry at Tech and different things, I feel a little bit deprived in that regard, that I didn't have more schooling of that nature, because I don't know a lot of the forms, for instance, in poems and things like that, villanelles and all that stuff, that's kind of foreign to me. So I call myself a folk poet, that is a self-taught poet. And I know I'm doing more than answering this question, but I'm trying to give you a little background what got me to this point right here, and I think that was the gist of your question. So I started playing guitar and practicing, and I had my first gig in California in a place called East of Eden in Salinas, California, which East of Eden is one of Steinbeck's books. James Dean starred in that movie, and so I figured that was a good omen. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to be a musician. So I started traveling around and playing, and back on the East Coast, moved up to New York City. And that was a real struggle. I've got a lot of New York pieces, but I couldn't do everything tonight. I was like, what am I going to do? Okay, we'll do this little thing. And people kept saying, well, you should record an album. You should put together a band. I'm like, I don't know a soul up here, and I don't know how we do that up here, but I could do that in Atlanta. So I moved back to Atlanta, and I put out my first album in 1984. Critics at that time in Creative Loafing and whatnot were calling me a poet. In fact, one critic in 1983 called me Atlanta's best poet, musical or otherwise, and that scared me because I didn't consider myself a poet. It took, another 10 years or so before I would even think about adapting that label, because I'd put poets on a pedestal, and I wasn't school, I wasn't a poet, but these critics, so it made me think about poetry. So then I started reading poetry and I read lots of lyrics, lots of novels, lots of fiction, but I hadn't read poetry. So I started reading poetry. So the critics kind of steered me into that. I know this is I'm going to get to the present pretty soon. I won't probably answer all the questions with this explosion, but, and so then there's a woman out of Boston named Patricia Smith. She lives in New York now, and she won the Pushcart Prize in our second anthology, this one. And, so when I went to Boston on a little music tour back in '96, she took me to Cambridge. We went to poetry reading every night. And I was thinking, there's nothing like that in Atlanta. There's nothing happening. So when I came back to Atlanta, I decided to start a poetry reading so I could pay Patricia Smith to come down to Atlanta. It took a lot of years before I finally did that. She finally featured a Java Monkey a couple of times, and she's had the revolving chair at Georgia Tech too. But so then all of a sudden I'm doing poetry readings, and I had people like Pearl Cleage and other people, and I would get like 4 features and try to I wanted it to be diverse because I felt like there was such a small audience to pay for poetry other than at the universities or something, that to get people to come, I had to appeal to a broad range of people. That's been my formula ever since. If you come to Java Monkey, you will see a very diverse crowd there. And I try to appeal to everybody because I think if you just try to make it one little group, then sooner or later that's going to dry out. Plus, you learn from people that are different from you. And I don't mean just different in terms of gender or, well, all those things, gender, race, ethnic background, sexual preference, and style. Now, we have the slam poets, poetry slam, and we do that there. We sponsor that. Brigitte featured there not too long ago. So this is I really pride ourselves in having poets from all over the country. In fact, we've had poets born in 13 different countries. And I think that's the secret, but it all started back when I was trying to figure out how to appeal to an audience. And the next thing you know, I got really involved in the whole poetry scene. I've been the slam master. We've taken slam teams to the nationals and et cetera, and the Java Monkey thing. And then they asked me to, be chairman of Poetry Atlanta. And I said, well, can we get a grant? Because I got things I want to do. And so we got grants to do these anthologies, which are 2-year periods of featured poets from there. Brigitte will be eligible to be in the next one. Okay, that was a long-winded answer to your question. But I think I probably answered a bunch of other questions. But we got any other questions? Yes.
Are there any musical artists that influence your writing? Since you particularly use a guitar, I was thinking perhaps maybe on the names like Bob Dylan, Morrison.
Yeah, that's 2 of them. I've mentioned Van Morrison in that piece of Edith's Kitchen. I don't know whether you caught that or not, but and Tom Waits is a very poetic. Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen was a poet who published poet before he started doing songs. Of course, I'm a huge Otis fan. It's not exactly a poet, but I've also got that soul kind of thing in my background that I just love. And like I said, people I think Martin Luther King Jr. was one of this country's greatest spoken word artists ever. And he is certainly a poet and very influenced by him. And I'm sure there's some that I've left out. Dylan was kind of the first musician of that era to use poetry, in music and kind of open the doors for a lot of people. I'm a big Springsteen fan. I like poetic songwriters. Next question.
In your poem, Edith's Kitchen, I was just wondering if that was that the poem about France? Did you actually meet her in France?
No, I met her in Bamberg, Germany. Actually, that's another story. I'll tell you this story. You hear about the internet, how it's going to connect the world. So I'm sitting in my office in my house, and I pick up the phone, and there's a woman who called me from Germany. She was working on a PhD in English literature at the University of Bamberg there. And she had a professor friend who was coming to Emory to set up, and his whole family going to live here for 4 months, to set up an international student journal. And her idea of helping him find out about Atlanta was to do a search on Atlanta artists. She found me in the Creative Loafing, found my webpage, went to my webpage. She liked it. She called me up. She wanted to buy some CDs. So we started communicating back and forth daily for the next 9 months. And then I went over there, and she helped me book a lot of gigs, and basically I fell in love. I was in love with her before I got there, to tell you the truth, and I was just thinking, I hope I'm not disappointed. I was not. But Edith is living there, and I'm living here, and it's just it's hard to do any kind of long-distance relationship. If I had a jet, I'd go over there every weekend, but I don't have a jet. I'm just a poor, starving artist. That's one thing. If I'd have pursued my MBA and my engineering, I'd probably have a big house in the suburbs, which is not very appealing to me, but I would, be better off financially. But I'm very happy with what I've done. Question back there, I believe. Well, that first little segment, for instance, was, trip traveling to Europe, obviously. That second little sleazy thing was, I I found myself so caught up in some of that stuff sometime that I was just irritated with myself. And but I got a little story about that piece. Back a while back, I was asked to do a presentation in an 8th grade class in Savannah. Now, things have changed since I've been to school, but I wouldn't have thought, I wasn't going to do sleaze machine in the 8th grade class. However, the teacher had some of my recordings, and like I said, I didn't plan to do it. However, she said I played it for them because I knew it would get their attention. Sure enough, I was doing my little presentation, doing kind of lighter stuff, nice poems and stuff, and finally this little girl raised her hand, and I recognized, and she went running over and whispered her in the teacher's ear, and the teacher said, she wants you to do sleaze machine. So I did it, and before that, everybody was just very polite, but after that, they just came alive and were asking me questions and talking to me and everything, and I was thinking, that's a perfect example. It's funny, you got to throw some sleaze out there to get anybody to pay attention, it seems. And the whole gist of that piece is that, and he's laughing at us all the way to the bank. And these 8th grade students just pointed out the exact theme or the lesson or something in that piece, in the fact that they were just, really weren't interested until I threw something a little sleazy out there, which I thought was, and I didn't think about that at the time, or I would have thrown it back at them and show, you folks are a perfect example of that. But, so I figured this is a college class, so we could get away with that here. Any other questions?
Actually, I have a question for you. Could you define spoken word and slam poetry for the students,
okay,
so that they get a better understanding?
I get asked that a lot.
Yes.
And like I said, initially, I considered myself a songwriter and a spoken word artist. Now, what is the difference? Then later on, I finally accepted I'll take the label of poet. Gladly. I just never felt like I had enough background to really call myself that. But spoken word can be poetry, but it doesn't necessarily happen to. It's basically, obviously, a performance. You're speaking. Obviously, poetry on the page, you don't need to speak it. You can just read it. But spoken word, obviously, is performed. So that whether you're just sitting there stiff and saying your words or performing, it's still spoken, and it is a performance of words in a broad sense. It can be poetry, but it's not necessarily poetry. Slam poetry is a small kind of genre of spoken word, and the best of it is also poetry. But it's not all poetry. It can be sometimes, it's performed within national rules, which has been going on for 20 years or so, and it's got to be 3 minutes and no props, original, and you're scored, judged by the audience. We do a slam at Java Monkey on the second Sunday of every month from October through April. It is very entertaining. It was designed 21 years ago in Chicago to get the audience involved in poetry. So therefore, it's entertaining because the scores go up right away. So therefore, it's not something you think about. A great poem, you may sit there and think about it for an hour. With slam poetry, you don't have time to do that. Scores got to go right up. So you got to hit people. It's like impulse poetry. You got to slam this thing right in them, and they're going, wow. It's not something you think about. It's not something that, it can be deep, but it's more of an emotional thing. Now, the emotion can be humor. It can be, all types of emotion, but usually emotion works best. And the judges aren't professionals. They're just chosen from the audience. You have 5 judges. You drop the high and the low to try to take out some of the bias. You add the 3 middle scores up. Not always does the best poet win, because there's so much more to it that the performance is such a big part of it. And you can be almost like a stand-up comic comic and get up there. There may not be any poetry in your piece at all and score great at slam, but there are great examples. Patricia Smith, I mentioned, is a 4-time national slam champion, and then now she's had the revolving chair of poetry at Georgia Tech and is considered very much a poet. She got the Pushcart Prize for a poem in one of our anthologies. Gypsy Yo, who is a woman from Albania, who has been on our slam team the last 2 or 3 years, is going to be performing at Georgia Tech, at the Poetry at Tech, because her writing is not only it's very poetic. So slam poetry can definitely be very poetic, but it's not always. Spoken word can be poetry, but it's mainly a spoken thing. And of course, poetry is poetry. And don't ask me what that is. We all got our little definitions of it, but I'm sure you can find a better one there. Any other questions? Excuse me? Yeah, I could do something of that nature. You might say that Slee's Machine was more of a slam kind of poem, even though it's hard to get people to vote for the Slee's Machine. So it's not a really vote getter. But I have used it in a slam before. But it's not, like I say, you gotta, that piece doesn't necessarily make you feel good. Not that a slam poem has to make you feel good, but it has to give you some emotional that you're like, yeah. It may be sympathetic to something in terms of I don't know, different trials and tribulations that different people go through, where there's race or gender or different kind of things. So if you can move people, I mentioned Martin Luther King being a spoken word artist, a poet. He would have just killed at slam. and Obama would have done well too. I mean, you're talking about a good speaker. George Bush wouldn't have done so good. But any other questions?
Well, thank you, Kodac.
You're welcome.